take it away.
Hello. Welcome to the Elite Performance panel. My name is Chip Terwilliger. I live here in Portland, and I work for the Portland Mercury, who helped put this on. So it's exciting to be here, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel. We have Jeff, Hayden, Ryan, and Ashton.
Hey guys.
Hello.
I'm going to let them say a little bit about themselves.
Hey, my name's Ashton, and I got started in gaming when I was about 2 years old. I remember my grandma, she woke me up on a school night. Excuse me, not 2 years old, in second grade. She woke me up on a school night at 11 p.m. And it's like, Grandma, what do you want? She's like, I can't get out of level 3 in Super Mario Bros. Can you help? And so I've always kind of had an intrinsic love of games. I've been involved in athletics most of my life as well. And it's very interesting how the two are correlated.
How many gold medals do you have?
How many gold medals? Okay.
Hayden's just cutting right to the point.
Yeah. I also did track, and I won a couple gold medals in the decathlon. Thanks.
I have no gold medals. So I'm Ryan Schneider. I'm with Insomniac Games. I've been with Insomniac for 13 years now, and some of my fondest memories as a kid were playing, I'm going to really date myself, but playing Adventure on the Atari 2600. And the thing that, for me, that I really recall the most was it didn't matter that you were this tiny little key in Adventure. It was what your mind projected you were. And that's really what hooked me on games in general. It just took me to another place, and as games have gotten more sophisticated, still that sense of wonder has never dissipated, and I really love being a part of this industry, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. So thank you for coming.
Hi, my name's Hayden. I work at Nike now, and I've been in Portland for 6 years. Prior to that, I worked at Ubisoft all over the world. Started in San Francisco, then went to Paris, and then spent a lot of time in Montreal working on games there. Pop culture and games have always been a part of my life. It's sometimes it's a challenge when you work at a sporting company to find that sort of entertainment, but Nike likes to tell stories and likes to surprise and delight. And sort of when we talk about what we love about games, I think about discovering the first warp zone in Super Mario Brothers and that blowing my mind, or
I'm right there with you.
Putting a glass of water in an envelope in Maniac Mansion and steaming off the stamp and that blowing my mind, or changing the radio station in Grand Theft Auto 3 and that opening up these worlds beyond sort of what I've seen. I try to bring that to my work at Nike, and I think I'm all the better for it because I love games.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeff Atienza. I currently also work at Nike. But prior to working at Nike, I worked at EA Sports for 10 years. And really, for me growing up, my two passions were sports and video games. And I was able to, through that passion, land two dream jobs working at EA Sports and at Nike. And, I'll date myself a little bit. Some of my favorite games, going back to the Atari, Yar's Revenge, Berserk, if you guys remember those games. And then into Nintendo with Castlevania and Contra, and then all the way to, having my dream come true, work on NBA Live 2002. And then prior to leaving EA Sports, one of my favorite franchises, working on the Fight Night series. So, yeah, just happy to be a part of this panel to basically talk about my two passions and interests growing up.
Cool, thanks guys. So let's get into it. So before starting any journey, you have to know where you're trying to go. What's it like to have such ambitious goals to pursue? Things like Olympic gold medal, or completing an Ironman, or just competing in an Ironman. It's daunting when you set out to do that, and how do you deal with that? Is it exciting?
Yeah, I guess I want to preface this for Ryan as well. He's also an athlete, a triathlon guy, an Ironman. So him and I are going to actually go out after this and have a little battle for a few miles. No, that's a really good question. I think when you're talking about the creative development process, from an athletic standpoint, it first starts with that goal. What am I trying to achieve? And when you set that goal, I think initially it's really exciting, because your whole team, which it really does take a team, now you're on the map. Now you have some kind of direction for your actions, and from then on, it's kind of like, it's really messy. I think, for example, going into an Olympic year, we know what our goal is. It's to win the Olympic Games, and from there we actually work backwards. We kind of set a plan, set some objectives, say, okay, here's the meet 2 weeks before the Olympics that we want to be at, and here's where we want to be during that time. 2 weeks before that, where do we want to be? A month before that, where do we want to be? So it's really this interesting working backwards process instead of starting from the beginning and going forward. The key is understanding that all those objectives probably aren't going to be there. It's just going to be completely different by the time you get to where you are.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Working backwards is key. And I think for those of you, how many of you are game developers in the audience, or aspiring game developers? So almost all of you, or many of you. So you know the importance of working backwards from your goal, like in terms of like, when do you want to release the game? What are your key milestones? How do you get there? What I've noticed from an athletic standpoint, relating this back to games, is I remember signing up for my first Ironman, and every Ironman I've done since, there's that moment of terror after you have hit send on registering, and you're like, oh my God, I really have to do this now. And I just spent a fair amount of money to torture myself for a period of hours and months. And it's certainly no different from a game development standpoint. Like, the dream and the excitement of, we're going to go set out and make this new creative adventure, this endeavor, this thing that's going to become and leave an indelible mark on who we are as humans, has just gotten very real. And you can go two ways with that. It's like, you either think about that and you don't sign up and you miss the opportunity of a lifetime, or you dance with that fear and you say, okay, how are we going to make this manageable every single day, every single week, every single month, every milestone, until you've shipped something that you're very proud of?
Going on with that, Jeff and Hayden, do you see any connections in development with Nike, with your stuff over there? What approach to combining the worlds of athletics and digital services do you have?
Both companies ultimately do like to tell stories. Both also sort of less romantic products that you have to get out. I think, sort of touching on what Ashton talked about, like, you do have a vision. When I was at Ubisoft, I was in sort of the creative conception for Montreal, and even in the early stages, we sort of said, what's the end magazine cover that we want to be on, and what's the story that people are going to read about what we're building. Specifically, when I came to Nike, I worked on in a division called Digital Sport, which was when gamification was very much a new term. A speaker named Jesse Schell gave an amazing talk, a really great game designer and teacher and writer, gave a talk that sort of was the first instance of gamification. And I was working at Ubisoft at the time, and I said, wow, this could change the world. There's probably like 3 companies that could really do this, like Kellogg's and Nike. And when Nike happened to talk about projection, like a couple months later, I got an opportunity to interview at Nike for specifically this type of measurement equals motivation experience. And
so wait, you literally just thought Kellogg's and Nike, and then you...
Yeah, 100%. It had to be someone that had scale, that could touch anybody, and had a product that everybody was willing to, had some sort of loyalty to.
Wow.
And and so that's how it happened.
Wow.
I think to compare where I'm at now in Nike working in footwear with game development, I think it starts with obviously what they said is a goal, but at the end of the day, it's having a team that really believes in a vision, right? For you game developers out there, you know that all the hard work and long hours and the hours that you spend with your team, you really need to be bought in on a vision, because otherwise your game development is going to go left, right, and center. And I think that's the same when we're talking about footwear, and currently where I work now is vision for shoes and footwear that go on the basketball court. We need to make sure that they're right for the athlete. We're meeting their needs, that it's playable, that it's going to last long, so on and so forth. And I think from a gaming standpoint, those are the same things. You're going to need to be able to make sure that the game is fun, the game is interesting, there's progression. So just having everyone be on the same page, and from sports to game development to product development, that's probably most key thing there.
Cool. And then I guess continuing with that, the pacing to running a decathlon to competing, the pacing, in developing a product that's going to be in the hands of millions of people. How do you make sure that you don't get burnt out or hit a wall, basically?
That's a really good question. When we were in pursuit of the Olympic Games this last year, one of our mottos was less is more. I think a lot of people who I compete against, really, there's a fear. If I don't feel like I'm making progress, then I must not be making progress. But what I learned early on as an athlete was sometimes the best step forward, that old saying, the best step forward is a step backward, is really true. And we always said less is more, and we always said rest is training too. And I think what happens when you rest, or when you just kind of like take that break and pace yourself, you get a chance to reflect, see a different perspective. It's really one of those, I don't know, I think I call it like a flow thing, maybe not necessarily a flow thing, but it's almost like if I tell my coach, hey, I'm not coming to practice today, he's okay with that. And when I come to practice the next day, I'm like reinvigorated. So there have been days when you try to push through a hard run or a hard workout or whatnot, but from an athletic standpoint, you really have to listen to your body, because a lot of times it's just a negative output when you try to push through something. Is that similar to like an Ironman?
Oh, very much so. From an Ironman training perspective, you really have to take the big picture of, first it starts with vision, then it starts with where am I in my training, how is that relating to the timeline, and can I afford to take the rest? Like, is the rest productive at this time? Like, if we're in the middle of a big training block and race, like our final training block before the race, fatigue is part of the equation. Pushing through mentally and physically is very important at that part of the training block. But if you're, let's say, 6 months out or 4 months out, like, there's a lot more wiggle room to take that day off. And I'm a big proponent of that. I coach some athletes on the side, and that's something I tell them is that, less is definitely more. I think from a game development perspective, if any of you are familiar, there's an author named Steven Pressfield. He has many great books out, but one of them is called The War of Art, and he talks about the act of being a professional. And part of being a professional is like showing up every day and doing the hard work. And so I think there's a very fine line between why are you taking that rest day? What's the end goal for that rest day? And making sure that you're still being a pro, and making sure that what other ways are you showing up to do the hard work of being a professional? So have that end goal in mind, and if rest is a part of that, or pacing is a part of that, that's a good thing too.
Ryan, does crunch still exist at Insomniac?
Oh, good question. So does crunch still exist at Insomniac? I mean, I think crunch is one of those challenges that exists for every developer, and we have a full project management team like trying to mitigate the effects of that as much as possible. But sure, there are always going to be milestones where we all need to band together, and I think it goes to the original question about pacing, and it goes to the original question about vision. If we can share the vision, and if we understand where we are with our milestone, hopefully it doesn't feel like crunch, because I think the idea of crunch often can be synonymous with like death march, in terms of like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to be here, I haven't seen my family, I just want a break. And I think as long as those periods of training and performance are well balanced, and well communicated in advance, and that we're doing everything we can to mitigate any unnecessary overwork, then I think that's where the sweet spot is basically effective management combined with staying on course with what the vision for the project is.
Is it like crunch time? Is that what we're?
Yeah.
Crunch is sleeping, like working at your computer around the clock to hit a milestone.
I see a lot of faces nodding. And
Who's crunched before? Oh, nice.
It's the worst.
And I think, that's the parallels if you're talking about whether it's, triathlons or marathons or decathletes. There's an expectation where you're really gonna give it obviously 200% and you're gonna grind through, because at the end, when you're at the podium or you're at the finish line, there's that, sense of relief and you've gotten through it. And I think, I could speak from experience. Those 3 months, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, through the weekends, from alpha through beta to hit 0 bugs. When I would watch kids play and enjoy kids or anyone playing the games that I helped create, you obviously get that sense of joy and relief, but also satisfaction, right? I think everyone in this room is in the industry because there's a sense of satisfaction that you help create something that other people enjoy. Same as in athletics, when you get to that finish line, there's that sense of all the work I put in to whatever it's all worth it.
Cool. So let's look at the, crossing the finish line, finishing development. Everybody gets to see the finished product. That's probably the best part for y'all. What's it like, coming down from that? Like coming down from your race, regrouping, looking ahead, but also, taking time to celebrate and make sure that, you enjoy what you've created.
That's a good one for you.
Yeah, this is a really good question. So in 2012, I ended up getting the gold medal, and it was something where my coach actually beforehand, he said, Ash, because this is something that my coach is 60 years old. He's been a coach pretty much his entire life. And he's like, Ash, if you nail this thing, like, we're gonna celebrate at the end of it. And I was like, yeah, coach, I think that's a really good idea. And literally a week after 2012, we were already thinking about 2016. And we literally had no celebration. It was almost like back to the drawing board. And I honestly still don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Funny thing is, in 2016, my coach goes, hey Ash, we're definitely celebrating if you do this 2 times. Actually still haven't done it, unfortunately. But there's a period when, so a lot of athletes, they take about 2 to 3 weeks off in between the Olympic Games and coming back to training again. We actually take about 3 months off. 3 months totally away from track. It's like we're not even athletes anymore. We eat burgers, we drink beer, be just people. And that time for us, I've done it every single year that I've actually won any national or global championship. It's probably the most important thing I do. It's this reflection period of being able to see what was that all about. And honestly, it's not really looking at the good things. It was looking at what can we change going ahead, going forward 2016 or 2015 World Championships. So I would value that time that we take off as probably some of the most highly valuable time to our success, for sure. For reflection, just absolutely getting away from it.
Yeah, I completely agree. From an athletic perspective, when I finish something like an Ironman, I take roughly a week to just do whatever I want, eat whatever I want, sleep as long as I want. But the truth is, it really takes about 3 weeks physically to recover from an event like that. And then mentally, it usually takes, almost equivalent to 3 months to recover from an event like that. I mean, that's only 3 sports. I'm not contending with 10.
The mental part, I think I didn't bring that up, but it's not even the physical, it's so much more the mental.
It really is. First, there's the excitement of writing the race report of like, oh, I remember feeling this on the marathon, and this is how I felt coming out of the swim, and this is what I would change about my nutrition next time, and this is what the finish line experience felt like, and this is the race I'm going to sign up for. And then a week after that, you're like, I can't even think about getting up to go train or race. Like I'm mentally depleted. The dopamine rush has left. My body is just wrecked, and it's a totally brutal experience. And from a game development perspective, I think there's a lot of folks who feel that way after the project is shipped. And from an athletic perspective, maybe Ash, you may have had this like where you had to read magazine articles, newspaper articles, TV shows talking about your performance. We have to read reviews, and sometimes those reviews are very kind, and sometimes those reviews are really, really rough. And we at Insomniac, we write our own equivalent of race reports. Like we do in-depth postmortems. We have a full-time position for a usability director who, through the game development process, is constantly setting up tests, reporting back what the bugs are, what the common issues are, and then at the end of a project, we do a postmortem. What worked, what didn't, what common issues are we seeing game to game, and how are we fixing those? So how we finish a game is very similar to how we finish an athletic performance. And the key is understanding what went right, what went wrong, and most important, what are we going to do better next time?
Yeah, I always experienced a pretty intense roller coaster of emotions. A lot of relief. The most popular game that I was a part of was Assassin's Creed. And when the first Assassin's Creed came out, that was released under the gun. I think nobody was on the internal team. It was the game that we really wanted to ship out. We had to, and I think Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood were closer to like what we actually wanted to ship and release into the world. And we were thrilled by the reception of Assassin's Creed 1. You get this like, the reviews are good, we're getting 8s and 9s, this is a huge relief, and then you go on GAF and read a bad comment, it can send you in a spiral. But I mean, there was a lot of at a certain point you can't add anything more to the game. You have to lock in, and you're sort of like, okay, hopefully for the sequel we can focus on this and nail that. And so that's something that I always remember is just like, I wish we could have done this. This would have made this one commenter happy. We agree with him. And that was always really tough. But at the same time, like, the game comes out, or if it's a success, I mean, like, that's a lot of validation, is knowing that you can then go back and work on it again. But it was it was absolutely exhausting, emotionally.
In my experience, the downtime post, game launching wasn't a lot. Like there was roughly between 3 and 4 weeks before we'd have to ramp up pre-production, because when working on an iterative sports game, which usually takes about a year, the NBA season doesn't stop for anyone. So we had to make sure, or the NHL seasons, we had to make sure that we were already building and designing the next iteration, 11 months out. So there wasn't that much downtime. And I think during that downtime was really when we reflected, much like these guys were saying, on the game itself. And no one's a harsher critic on a game more than the actual people that built the game. Like a Metacritic score isn't going to get you more down, or a comment, bad comment from a review. It's really because we did at that time, we eat, sleep, breathe the game. Like that's our blood, sweat, and tears. And so I think for us to have that 3 weeks to relax before kicking into gear on the next one was really important for us.
Totally.
Well, I think like the overarching theme, especially of this last bit, is even when you do take that break, you're pretty critical, and it's just every single product, every single goal, it's about getting better. And I think that's a pretty obvious thing, but I really liked hearing about just the different side of it, because I don't really think it's that different. It doesn't sound that different.
No, it's all about, and we were talking about this a little bit before, it's all about attention to detail. I mean, you know better than anybody that from an athletic perspective, it comes down to seconds and sometimes microseconds, and you overanalyze every single decision. Like I can think back to a race I did probably 2 or 3 years ago, and like I tried to cut, like there was a swim buoy at the last part of the swim, and like I thought I could just like if this is the buoy, I thought I could just shave it this way, and there was a marshal right there saying no, you got to go around, and I missed like my personal best race result for an Ironman by probably 5 or 6 seconds, and it was those 5 or 6 seconds where I was just like, oh, I can be right near the buoy, but not quite all the way around the buoy. And it's like, if I just done that, it would have made a big difference. And you know, there are so many of those decisions, as we all know, as game developers and as creators, that where you're just like, I can think back to Resistance, like, should the Chimera have pants or no pants? And that became like this huge, massive debate in the studio. But then we saw in reviews that nobody cared about that, whereas what they cared a lot more about was some of the bigger, more obvious things about like 8-player synchronous co-op. And it's like, where do you make those split-second decisions or those prolonged debates that ultimately make the difference between success and failure?
Well, I want to personally thank you guys for coming up on stage and just spending your time with us, all the way from Chip, Jeff, Hayden, Ryan. Thank you guys, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.